For the last time this season, Mike Tomlin took a podium and spoke to the media, and obviously the big questions were addressed and the big issues were talked about, and the quarterbacks were the highest thing on everybody's list. And we got some insight that I think is very, very fascinating. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbein. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/all Steelers talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they want quarterback competition. Where that quarterback competition comes from, we'll find out. But they have a plan. How that plan works out, they are obviously open to. And if that plan works out, they obviously have backup plans if it does not. Now, Kenny Pickett is still technically their guy, and Mike Tomlin said yesterday that he will resume his QB1 status with the Pittsburgh Steelers and that he knows it's a huge year for him, but he's excited to see how he handles that challenge. And they also want Mason Rudolph back. They want Mason Rudolph to come back and compete with Kenny Pickett and compete to be the starter and maybe remain the starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we've already talked about how over the last 2-3 days, there have been more than one player that has come on and said, hey, look, I expect Mason Rudolph to be the starter in 2024. What he has done over the last 4 games is worth continuing, and we believe in this guy, and he's shown us that he is a capable NFL quarterback and one that could lead us to promising places, the whole nine. And I think Mike Tomlin feels the same way, that Mason Rudolph could be a dude. He could be the Steelers dude, and they don't want to miss out on an opportunity there. He mentioned it yesterday again, and it's my favorite Mike Tomlin line from here on out. There is a fine line between a backup and a Pro Bowler in the NFL, and Mason Rudolph just might be that guy. And that is a huge assumption. It's a guess. It is a prediction, and it is way too early to make that prediction, but that is where we are at with the Pittsburgh Steelers and their quarterback situation. But I want to dive in between the lines. I want to talk about what Mike Tomlin said, but also what it means for the Pittsburgh Steelers and their future and their quarterback situation. For one, yesterday was probably the most honest press conference I have ever seen in Mike Tomlin's career, at least in my time covering him the last 5-6 seasons. He's spoken a lot. He's always given us something. He's always had his honest moments. Yesterday was the first time from top to bottom you just kind of thought, he knows, he gets it. He realizes where the Pittsburgh Steelers are, where they should be, and that it's starting to beat him up that they are not getting to the places where he wants them to be, and maybe change. Maybe it's time to be a little bit more honest. Maybe it is time to address some things that need to be addressed and to stop hiding and securing your players and securing your coaching staff and so on and so forth. Yesterday was the first time in my time covering Mike Tomlin where I walked away and said everything he said there was the truth, and you could actually take away from it and say this is probably what's going to happen with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, option A at quarterback is Mason Rudolph versus Kenny Pickett. How that competition goes down, we do not know, but to be totally honest with you, I think that Mason Rudolph would walk into the summer as QB1. He would take most of the starting reps. Kenny Pickett would have an opportunity to take some as well, and they would compete, and the Steelers would hope that Kenny Pickett beats out Mason Rudolph, but they wouldn't expect it to happen. That would be big. But for those sitting around saying, oh, well, Mason Rudolph isn't my guy, he's not the guy that I want to be the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback in 2024, I think they have to look elsewhere via trade or the NFL draft. That is also on the table, because Mike Tomlin said that he's going to continue to evaluate NFL draft quarterbacks, and he's not going to miss on these guys, and he's not going to take a shot at, oh, well, we'll have our guys, and then miss a shot saying, oh, well, never mind, we don't, and now our backs are against the wall, and we don't know what's going to happen. So, for those thinking, well, if it's not Mason, it's definitely Kenny, I'm not totally sold that it's definitely Kenny. I think that the Steelers would bring in a quarterback through the draft if Mason Rudolph went elsewhere, which is definitely a possibility, and you heard that in Mike Tomlin's voice. He said it every time he talked about Mason Rudolph, but he's a free agent. But he's a free agent. But he's a free agent. He knows. He knows where Mason Rudolph is. He knows that Mason Rudolph will have value around the NFL. He knows that there will be teams looking for a quarterback, whether it'll be a starter or a backup, and they will call Mason Rudolph. And at the end of the day, money and opportunity are the two biggest speaking points in the NFL, and the Steelers might not be able to give Mason Rudolph either of them. So maybe he goes elsewhere. If that happens, it does sound like the Pittsburgh Steelers will bring in a quarterback through the NFL draft. How high up, who knows? But it kind of feels like it'll be high enough to be a starting quarterback in year one, where it'll be somebody who will actually compete with Kenny Pickett, because the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to risk going into another year without their quarterback. That was the biggest takeaway, is that the Steelers understand where this season could have gone if they had their guy versus a guy. Next year, they want their guy. And they're still open to that guy being Kenny Pickett. But like every team that drafts a quarterback in the first round and that quarterback doesn't work out in the first 2 seasons, by year 3, you have to have a contingency plan, and you have to start facing the facts that maybe that guy isn't the guy. The Steelers are there. I don't know if that means a first-round quarterback, but I wouldn't rule it out. I don't know if that means a second-round quarterback, but I wouldn't rule it out. I don't know if that means that they make a splash trade for somebody, and I don't know if that means Justin Fields. I don't know if I got the vibe that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go all in to go find the quarterback and the best quarterback, but I do think that Omar Khan is a new guy and a new GM and brings new light to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if Mason Rudolph leaves elsewhere and the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at themselves and saying, well, Justin Fields is available, Kirk Cousins is affordable and available, Baker Mayfield's available. Those are just the 3 names that have been tossed out all week long. I don't know if any of them actually make sense or if any of them are actual options for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but everybody keeps naming them as the guys that the Steelers should go get. I don't know if I agree with any of them besides Justin Fields, but I'm just giving examples. If any of those guys become available and they meet the Steelers' needs, I don't see how Omar Khan just sits back and says, well, it's all right because we have Kenny Pickett and we might draft somebody and that'll be okay. I think the Steelers are gung-ho on finding their guy, and that guy could be Kenny Pickett, and they're very open to that guy being Kenny Pickett. They want that guy to be Kenny Pickett, but they are realistic about the situation that they are in. They are realistic that they have a team to compete if they do have a quarterback, and they just don't have a quarterback. And it goes the same way with the offensive coordinator. Mike Tomlin immediately said it will be an outside option. He immediately said it will be somebody with NFL experience. He immediately said it will be somebody who can grow a quarterback. They're looking for somebody to develop the guy, the next Ben Roethlisberger, the next franchise QB of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That could be through the NFL draft. It could be through a trade. It could be through free agency. It could be Mason Rudolph, and it could be Kenny Pickett. The big thing here is yesterday we were walking in there, and there was a lot of concern and a lot of theories that, man, Mike Tomlin's going to walk in there and say Kenny Pickett is still our starter, and that's it. And we believe in Kenny Pickett, and he will be the guy, and we will give him another opportunity to prove himself, and we trust that he will prove himself. He said that he could be the guy. He said that he will resume his starter status, whatever that means. But he was also very open that this is a huge year for Kenny Pickett and that things might not go as planned for Kenny, and he has to prove himself. And I think that's enough to walk away and say, look, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to try. They're going to do everything they can to put themselves in a position where they could compete next year because they have a quarterback and they have a team and they have an offensive coordinator. They understand where they've been. They understand where they need to be. That's exciting stuff for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's exciting stuff for the fan base. Maybe it's not exciting stuff for a guy like Kenny Pickett, but he's going to get an opportunity. Either way, if you are sitting around and you are worried about where the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is headed in 2024, be a little bit more optimistic. Open your eyes and pay attention to the headlines throughout the offseason, because I feel like the Steelers are going to be hunting. And if it's not Mason Rudolph, if Mason Rudolph decides to go elsewhere, they're going to start searching for another quarterback.